It was a quiet and peaceful afternoon in an upscale retail store. You know the kind. Spotless floors that gleam under fancy lights, shelves arranged so perfectly it almost feels like stepping into a catalog. Customers browsed casually while employees moved efficiently, assisting wherever needed. Then, out of nowhere, the tranquility shattered. A sharp voice cut through the calm like nails on a chalkboard. "Excuse me, is anyone even working here?" The woman's tone was loud, shrill and demanding. She stood near the entrance, tapping her foot impatiently, clutching a designer handbag that screamed, "Look at me, I'm expensive." This woman, let's call her Katie, was the picture of entitlement. You know the type, head held high like she owns the place, ready to unleash a storm on anyone who doesn't bow to her whims. Not far from her, an elderly black man was quietly stocking a shelf. His movements were slow but steady, his face kind and calm. When he heard her outburst, he turned to her with a polite smile, his eyes warm with patience. "How can I help you, ma'am?" he asked in a voice so gentle it could soothe even the most frustrated soul. But Katie, she wasn't in the mood to be soothed. She looked him up and down, her face twisting into a sneer. "You? Are you kidding me? Shouldn't you be, I don't know, retired? Why is it so hard to find decent help these days?" Her words dripped with disdain, each one a little sharper than the last. And yet the man stood firm, unshaken. He didn't flinch, didn't frown. If anything, his polite smile deepened, as if he'd seen her kind of attitude many times before. Now, let's hit pause for a second. Imagine you're there, watching this unfold. What would you do? Would you step in and say something? Or would you stand back, hoping the storm would pass? Katie was just getting started. She crossed her arms tightly, her voice rising with each passing second, as she unleashed her frustration on the elderly man. First, she scolded him for not answering her questions fast enough. Then, she turned her attention to the store itself, ranting about how confusing the layout was. Who designs these aisles? A blindfolded toddler could do a better job. Not stopping there, she even took a jab at the temperature. "It's freezing in here. Don't you people know how to adjust the thermostat? Or is that too much for you to handle?" Through it all, the man remained composed. He listened carefully, his expression calm, as if her outburst didn't faze him at all. He kept his voice polite and steady, gently asking questions to figure out what she actually needed. "What specific product are you looking for, ma'am?" But Katie wasn't having it. She didn't want help. She wanted to vent. "Don't talk to me like I am stupid," she snapped, her voice dripping with condescension. "Where's your manager? You clearly don't know how to do your job." And then, as if she hadn't already gone far enough, Katie leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a muttered insult. "Honestly, they'll let anyone work here these days." Oof. That last comment wasn't just rude, it was downright offensive. And while Katie seemed blissfully unaware of how inappropriate her words were, her remark didn't go unnoticed. Several shoppers nearby exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions a mix of shock and discomfort. The elderly man, however, he didn't flinch. He stood tall, his posture dignified, and continued to meet Katie's anger with calm professionalism. He wasn't about to let her words break his composure. Now let's pause for a second. Have you ever witnessed someone like Katie before? The kind of person who bulldozes through conversations with zero awareness of how they're coming across? If you think this is as bad as it gets, think again. Katie's meltdown was only just beginning, and she had no idea what was coming next. As the situation between Katie and the elderly man continued to escalate, someone else was quietly observing from a distance. Emily, a young cashier who had been sorting through a few items nearby. She'd had enough of the disrespect and couldn't stay silent anymore. "Ma'am," Emily called out, her voice steady but firm. "This man is just trying to help you. Please show some respect." Katie whipped around, her face contorted with rage. She glared at Emily as if she were the one who had committed the unforgivable sin. "I don't need advice from some minimum-wage teenager," she sneered, her words laced with venom. But Emily wasn't backing down. She stood her ground, her gaze unwavering. "That man has been working here longer than you've been shopping. You might want to reconsider how you're speaking to him." For a moment, the store fell into a heavy silence. Katie was taken aback by Emily's boldness. The other customers, who had been quietly observing the scene, seemed to hold their breath. Some exchanged glances, while others whispered amongst themselves, clearly uncomfortable with Katie's outburst. This wasn't just a simple customer complaint anymore. It had turned into a showdown, and the tension was palpable. Emily had become an unexpected ally to the elderly man, standing up for him when no one else dared to. But little did Katie know, this was just the beginning of her rude behavior backfiring in the most surprising way. Finally, the elderly man raised his hand just slightly, and in an instant, the tension in the room seemed to evaporate. He spoke in a soft, calming voice that cut through the noise. "It's all right, Emily," he said gently, reassuring the young cashier. Then, turning to Katie, he offered a polite smile. "You're looking for the limited edition jewelry collection, correct? Allow me to escort you." Katie wasn't impressed. She rolled her eyes dramatically and let out a huff, muttering under her breath about old men wasting her time. But despite her attitude, she followed him, probably because, at this point, she thought she had no other choice. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a very different kind of experience. As they walked through the store, something strange started happening. Employees, who had been moving around the store with their usual duties, suddenly began to greet the elderly man with an unexpected level of respect. "Good afternoon, Mr. Daniels." "Do you need assistance, Mr. Daniels?" Katie barely even noticed, her mind still focused on her irritation. She was too busy complaining about the poor service to pay attention to anything else. But when they reached a glass display case in the center of the store, everything changed. The man, Mr. Daniels, pulled out a key from his pocket, unlocked the case with a smooth motion, and turned to Katie with a calm, almost amused expression on his face. "My name is Arthur Daniels," he said slowly, watching her closely. "I'm the founder of this store." Katie's expression shifted immediately. Her mouth fell open, her eyes wide. She froze. Boom. There it was. The shock that hit her so hard she could hardly process it. Imagine that moment. The complete reversal of the power dynamic she had been so sure of. Can you picture the look on her face? The realization that she had just been rude to the very person who built the place she'd been mocking? Hold on to that thought, because the surprise isn't over yet. Keep watching. Katie's jaw literally dropped as the words sank in. You're the owner?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Mr. Daniels replied calmly, his expression still warm, yet carrying an unmistakable air of authority. "And since you seem unhappy with our service, perhaps this isn't the store for you." The room was filled with an electric buzz as the other shoppers watched in awe. It was like they were witnessing a live drama unfold, and Katie had just unknowingly stepped into the role of the villain. Katie, realizing she'd just made the biggest mistake of her day, maybe even her life, tried to backpedal. "I didn't mean anything by it. I was just frustrated," she stammered, her tone now desperately pleading for a way out. But Mr. Daniels wasn't having it. He held up his hand, silencing her in an instant. "Ma'am, I believe in treating everyone with respect, regardless of their role," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "I suggest you take your business elsewhere." The words hit her like a ton of bricks. She stood there, her face turning bright red, realizing just how badly she had misjudged the situation. Without another word, she spun around, in a mix of embarrassment and anger, bolted for the door, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she fled. It wasn't just a customer walking out of a store. This was a woman who had just been publicly humbled. And honestly, she wasn't the only one who had learned something that day. The entire store had witnessed how a little kindness and dignity can go a long way, even when faced with rudeness. As Katie rushed out the door, red-faced and embarrassed, something unexpected happened. The silence in the store was shattered by the sound of applause. At first, it was just a few customers, but soon the whole room joined in. Employees, shoppers, even Emily, who had been standing nearby, couldn't hide her smile. It was like everyone in the store had been waiting for that moment. Waiting to see someone stand up to the rudeness and arrogance Katie had displayed. And when Mr. Daniels calmly handled the situation with grace, it was a powerful reminder of what true respect looks like. The applause wasn't just for Mr. Daniels. It was for what he represented, dignity in the face of disrespect, and kindness over anger. Mr. Daniels, however, didn't need the applause. With quiet dignity, he turned and continued stocking the shelves as if nothing had happened. His actions spoke louder than any words ever could. He didn't need to shout or humiliate Katie in return. He had already made his point. By handling the situation so calmly, Mr. Daniels showed everyone in the store the true meaning of power. It's not about authority or wealth, but the ability to remain humble and kind, even when provoked. It wasn't about winning an argument. It was about showing the strength it takes to do the right thing. And that lesson stuck with everyone who had witnessed it. So what's the real takeaway from all of this? Sometimes, the loudest voice isn't the one that wins. It's the quiet strength, the humility, and the respect for others that makes the most lasting impact. And trust me, Katie won't forget that lesson anytime soon. But here's a thought. What would you have done if you were in Mr. Daniels' shoes? Would you have handled the situation with the same calm dignity? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Never judge a book by its cover, and definitely don't mess with someone who might just own the entire library. Think about it. Katie thought she could bully an elderly man just because of how he looked. But little did she know, she was dealing with the founder of the very store she was shopping in. That's a classic example of karma served ice cold, right? It's a reminder that the world is full of surprises, and it's always best to treat others with respect. No matter who they are or what they look like. You just never know who might be standing in front of you. If you enjoyed this story and its perfect dose of poetic justice, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You'll get more incredible tales like this one, full of lessons and surprises that remind us why kindness and respect will always win in the end. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, there's more where that came from. Stay tuned for more amazing stories, and we'll see you next time.